So here we are in the eighth installment of my Then and Now series, where I revisit a photo that I edited and shared many years ago, and then apply a fresh coat of paint to it with newer editing tools and a more refined eye. For this installment, we're going to use a photo that I took in 2011, 15 years ago, in the Pacific Northwest, specifically Port Townsend, a beautiful seaport city located in Washington's Olympic Peninsula. Now, in just about every installment of this series, I usually do a wholesale re edit of the photo, and that's not going to be much different here. However, there are some principles that I want to preserve from that original 15-year-old edit, but apply them with much newer and more powerful tools. Okay, let's dive in. All right, so here we are in Lightroom, and this is the photo we're going to use. This is the photo that I edited and shared already. You can see that I took it, like I said, in 2011, specifically in October. And I love this photo. Compositionally, I think it's a strong photo, especially the strong leading lines, the way you go through the frame and then cross over, going to the right and then to the left. And then you've got this little lamp post over here serving as kind of like a visual piece of interest or a place for the eye to rest. Now, in terms of the treatment, as you can see, this is a very, very high contrast black and white treatment. And I don't know that I would do it again today. Not that I have anything against black and white, but if you follow me, if you look through, my videos or my Instagram feed, you'll know that 99% of everything I do is in color, and that's just how I see it. It's also how I enjoy to edit. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know what caused me to apply this black and white treatment, but I did, and it kind of works, I guess. Um, but I also use, I'm not sure what I use to apply this kind of fake blur, but it's not very good. Like if you zoom in here, you can see, like, I'm not sure what happened. I really do wish I knew. Maybe it was, honestly, I don't know. I used to use an app back in the day, years and years ago, by On One called Focal Point. I don't know if that was even around back then. It might have been. So maybe that's what I used. But yeah, you can see it's really not very good. I don't know how I kind of, let it go out like this with these kind of like random pieces of sharp focus and then fake blur. But yeah, so here is the original unedited photo. You can see that for the most part, going from here to here, not much has changed, right? Like it's pretty much the same composition, so to speak. Editing wise, obviously, this is a color photo. I also used an ND filter, and you can tell because, I mean, I dragged the shutter for about 2.5 minutes at f22 at ISO 50. And despite that, you can see, aside from some dust spots, it's still, I don't know if you would call this noise. I call it noise. And so you can imagine that denoise will be one of the first things that I apply. And so let's go ahead and do that. Let's start editing the photo. So I mentioned how the first thing I'll do is apply denoise. So let's just go ahead and do that. Obviously, this AI denoise certainly was not available in 2011. So I'm happy to have it here. And if we zoom in, you can see, yeah, much, much better if we kind of toggle. Um, just got rid of a little bit of that crispiness in the sky. Now you can see there are dust spots. This was when I was shooting with my Canon camera, and I was notoriously bad at not keeping my sensor clean. So another tool that we did not have in the remove panel here, you can see this distraction removal section is auto dust spot removal. So I'm going to go ahead and click on apply here. Lightroom uses AI to detect the dust, and then it uses what's called content-aware fill or patch match to actually fill in the spots. So the actual fills are not generative AI the way using this brush here with this generative AI checkbox selected is. That makes a call to Firefly. And I'm actually going to use that now because there are still a few things that I want to get rid of, like this strip over there, and just, some kind of distractions on the this area here on the banister, just stuff that kind of is bothering me that I don't want in the frame. And I think that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and click on remove. And so just taking a quick look around, everything looks great. The generative AI gender remove brush is absolutely fantastic. All right, let's go ahead really quickly. Also, I'm going to go to the crop panel. I'm going to click this over here to auto adjust, which does a really nice job of kind of straightening that horizon really quickly. And let's also go to edit here. And the first thing I want to do is get a custom white balance. So I'm going to select the dropper here, and I'm going to select an area that should be kind of gray. And you can see instantly the ND filters that I used way back when. I don't remember the brand, but uh, they were fine. They did the job. But as you can see here, if I toggle, this is the color cast that was introduced. Again, I dragged the shutter for 2.5 minutes to get that kind of glassy effect in the water. But you can see with the custom white balance, this looks a lot more neutral. It got rid of that kind of blue tint to the photo. Now let's go ahead here. I'm going to apply the adaptive color profile. And you can see it does a really nice job of kind of evening out the overall exposure. Of course, you have this amount slider here, so you can dial this back or, up or down. I'll bring it down just a little bit right around here. Now, one of the other things that I want to do in the remove panel again is I'm going to go to visualize spots because you can see there's still a bunch of spots here. Now, I don't need to use generative AI to get rid of these, but I will take, a quick minute. I'm going to fast forward this and get rid of all these spots over here. And I should have taken an extra second to talk about the visualize spots option here. You can enable it or disable it with the A key on your keyboard. And I think the default value, yeah, is 50. Now, I find the threshold value of 50 not to usually be very helpful. I generally bring this up to like 100 or like, 95, and it does a much better job of helping you visualize, if there are any remnant spots that the auto dust option here, the dust removal here did not get, which, is important to bring up that it doesn't always get that. And so that's why we have the ability to refine further using these manual brushes. All right, now we can have some more fun here. Let's go ahead and push the whites out a bit. Also going to open up the exposure just overall like this. And the reason why I'm doing that is because what I want to do now is apply a point curve adjustment. So I'm going to apply an S curve. This is something I do almost all the time. Basically, it's 3 dots. It's a dot here, it's a dot here, and it's a dot here. These are your shadows, your highlights, your midtones. And so I'm going to take the shadow dot here and I'm going to drag it down, and you can see how it does a nice job of kind of deepening those shadows. I'm going to increase the highlights by moving this dot up a bit, kind of boost it. And then this is your midtone control. So right around there looks good. And then what you've basically done is you've applied basically a custom contrast. Instead of using the contrast slider, you can apply contrast kind of tailor fit using this curve. The thing is, when you apply edits using a point curve, there is a color saturation boost, which is why there is this refine saturation slider. So you can see if I bring it to 0, I'll go back and forth. You can see, like, if you look over here in the horizon, or even on the wood, you can see how it gets warmer and then a bit more desaturated. So usually I go about halfway, and I find that to be really good. The other thing that I like to do is adjust the calibration here and the color calibration panel, specifically the blue primary saturation. I love this slider. I usually bring this up a bit, and that looks really nice. I'm also going to increase the red primary saturation slider. You might not be able to see it though in the video, but trust me, this is just a fantastic slider. And if you don't know, or you don't see the color calibration panel, you don't know why, that's because it's hidden by default in Lightroom. And to access it, you'll just click on this try dot here in the right toolbar, and then you'll select show color calibration, and that will make it visible. Now, I'm not going to apply any of these effects globally here. And instead, what I want to do is use the masking panel, which allows me to tailor where those effects are applied. And so for this photo, I'm going to select landscape. This is another AI tool where it uses AI to identify the different attributes in the photo. Now, normally I would select sky, but I'm not going to do that here. I'll show you why in a minute. In fact, I will select sky, and then I'll illustrate it to you later on. The other one I'm going to select is architecture, just because it selects the pier, and then water. Those are the 3 masks that I want to create, and I want to make sure that this checkbox to create 3 separate masks is selected. All right. So with the sky, the reason why I don't want to use it here, I'll show you, is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply some dehaze to this sky. Now, the reason why I don't want to use the sky is because you can see how there is almost like a really hard edge, and the sky mask did not select this part of the land or this area here. And so, and that's right, kind of rightfully what it's doing. It's supposed to select the sky. The problem is that it kind of creates a halo. And so instead of using a sky mask, which I'm going to actually, I'll keep it on for now. I'll just disable it by clicking on the little mute icon here. I'll go ahead and create a new mask. And I'll just use a linear gradient and I'm just going to drag down. And even if it spills over a little bit, that's okay. But it'll still give me kind of a softer transition than the sky mask. And so now what I can do is apply dehaze to this area here. And now it's a much smoother transition. The other thing that I want to do is warm the sky up just a tiny bit. So right around there. And I can see there's a dust spot over there. So let's go here back to remove and just get rid of that because it's going to bother me. Because I did that, I invalidated these two AI tools again because the remove tools sit above adaptive profile and masking. So let's go ahead and update that. Okay, so now let's go back to masking and I'm going to delete that sky mask. I really don't need it here. So let's just get rid of it. Then let's move on to architecture. So with architecture, what I want to do is add some texture because it really is a textured surface and a bit of clarity. I'm also going to go to the curve section here of this specific mask and I'm going to deepen the shadows a bit. All right, that looks really good. And then the last thing I'm going to do is go to water. And with water, same thing. I'm going to apply a bit of dehaze right around there. And I'm going to reduce clarity and reduce texture. Make it really soft. All right, now we're going to wrap things up with a few more global edits. We're done with masking. And I mentioned how there are certain principles that I want to carry over from the original photo. The first is actually the blur. I like the principle of applying lens blur to kind of draw the eye further up the frame. It's just that the actual method was a bit over the top, right? So let's go ahead and click on apply here for lens blur. And you can see that by default, lens blur is blurring the background, but keeping the foreground sharp. And I want the opposite. And I can control that with this focus range tool. So basically, anything that the range covers to the left is closer to you, the foreground. And as you expand it to the right, it's going to bring the background or things that are further away into focus. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this entire plane of focus to the background. And you can see here now the foreground here is getting blurred. And so I'm going to constrict that even more. I want more of the foreground to be blurry. Now, don't worry. I know it looks really bad, but the reason for that is because we're at a blur amount of 50. And so in fact, sometimes what I'll do is I'll increase the blur amount to be really strong to get a better idea of visualizing like where that blur is being applied. So right here, this looks good. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to dial that blur amount way down, like really, really like 11 or 12. Basically, it's going to be very, very subtle. It's just enough to kind of, the eye likes to see the sharpest things first. And this adds just a little bit of blur to where it kind of pushes the eye forward. Okay, so the last thing that I want to do is apply sharpening. I do this generally the same way, where I take the radius and I bring it to half a pixel. I take detail to 100. Basically, what this means is that sharpening is only being applied to a half pixel on either side of every edge. And then with detail, it's applying sharpening to not just the large edges, but also the fine edges. Well, let's go ahead and we'll zoom in here. Let's press and hold on the Option or Alt key while dragging on the mount to visualize sharpening. We don't want to get to this. You see how it's starting to get crispy? I just want to get right before that. So right around here. Then we'll zoom out and same thing. Press and hold on the Option or Alt key while dragging on masking to remove sharpening from areas where it doesn't need to be applied. Now the last thing, and now that I'm looking at this, the last thing I want to do is go back to masking, create a new mask, go to radial gradient, and I'm going to make a wide kind of oval here in the center of the frame because I want to draw the eye to the center of the frame. Except you can see that the overlay is showing where the mask edit is going to be applied, and I want it to be applied basically the inverse of that. And so to make that happen, I just need to click on this invert button over here, and you can see how that flips the mask. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the exposure a little bit, and I'm also going to make it a little bit larger with a larger feather. Yeah. Okay. That's looking, actually, I'm going to dial that back. It's a bit too strong. Yeah. Okay. Good. That's looking good right here. And now you can see if I press the backslash key that is what we started with. And this is our edit, which I actually find a lot nicer right now. And if we go to the grid view, let's go ahead and compare these two edits here. I'll put them side by side, and let's give ourselves a little bit more screen real estate. And so you can see here, yeah, like to me, I find this to be a much more pleasing photo. We're still, like I said, bringing in the principles of using lens blur to further draw the eye. Also, by using that radial gradient mask and making this kind of center area a bit brighter than the rest of the photo, the eye gets drawn to it. And you know, this is a fun photo for the eye to explore because it has these really strong lines in the photo, and it doesn't just go, you know, from one corner through to a vanishing point. It goes to about halfway through and then juts over to the left. And again, you're rewarded with this little lamppost over here. So, you know, some people might like this style, this treatment better, and that's totally fine. That's the thing about this series that I love is that, you know, I'm not saying that the old version is bad because I edited and I shared it and I thought it was good at one point, but that was then. Again, 15 years have gone by. 15 years. That is crazy. And so that's kind of why I love this series. Why I don't want to stop is because uh, not only does it give me an opportunity to revisit photos that I really like, but maybe wouldn't share in their current incarnation, and then you know apply some new edits. And hopeful that it inspires you. That's my biggest goal with this series is odds are many of you watching this also have photos from 15, 20 years ago, if not even older, that, you know, maybe you want to take another crack at. The tools that we have in Lightroom are so powerful and they're only going to get more powerful. So I'm kind of excited. Maybe in another 15 years, maybe we'll do another version of this photo here. That would be a lot of fun. So with that, I touched on numerous things in the Lightroom that are new. And if you want to learn everything there is to know about Lightroom, please check out my course called Lightroom Everywhere. Link is in the description below. And if this is your first time seeing one of these Then and Now videos, I've got a whole series, which I'll link to right here, or you can see what YouTube thinks you might like. As always, a thumbs up is greatly appreciated, as is clicking on the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notified of all future videos. Thanks a lot, everyone.